Okay, so basically, part two from last, having been in England, the share was supposed to be part two from the last share, but it's been a 3 week break. So I'm doing part two from 3 weeks ago, next week, so that's only a month. However, the video is available online, and we can catch up that way. Fine. But there's something I wanted to talk about tonight, which is, I'm on a campaign at the moment, so you'll see why. Do you see the title? The Cure for 2,000 Years of Goddess. And I have discovered it. So this is the first public declaration of this year, so it's very exciting stuff. It's a bit like the fellow, who was that Scottish guy who found the cure to blood poisoning, and he discovered antibiotics. Alexander Fleming, the Eureka moment. This is a Eureka moment share. Exciting stuff. Okay, so the Yerushalmi says in Yuma, in Imperial Aleph, in Halacha Aleph, that if you live in a Dara didn't see, most famous thing of all, if you live in a Dara didn't see the base of Mikdash rebuilt, then you're behaving precisely and exactly as the Dara that got it destroyed in the first place. Ramatasiel Solomon, he said once, this goes back about 15 years, 20 years perhaps, rather tongue-in-cheek, I'm quite sure, that we would have to say for all the effort and all the work that's been put into solving the problem of this exile, and we're talking a really dreadful exile, you'd have to admit that the project has been a failure. It sounded a little bit controversial. He went on and said, well, maybe it's just too much for us. Maybe this Shmiras Loshen thing, maybe if we could do it just like in the morning. Do you think you keep it in the morning? How about if we just all agree we'll do it in the morning? I'm paraphrasing, I can't remember exactly what he said. Oh, how about an hour? You think you give it an hour? But of course, even though he was, as it were, making fun of it, or making fun of our struggle on it, it's a very serious struggle, but it wasn't really controversial, because if you live, says the Gemara in Yerushalmi, and a Dara didn't see it rebuilt, then obviously you've not solved the problem. So it seems to be something which is absolutely awful. It seems to be beyond us.
It's funny though that every generation has their own challenges.
That's true, but it seems to be. That's interesting. Okay, so let's hold on to that idea for a second. So let's ask if there is a shoshel that's running through, they could think all this together. Certainly, they have their own challenges. I wrote about this in my column in this week's Hamadiyah. But leaving the specific, the general thing is that we're in this goddess. So there's the general problem and the specific to each generation. But let's see if we can solve that. That's really what it's about tonight. Rav Shlomo Wolbe, in a Mamori Yimei Rothstein, he starts off by saying that everything, and I think I mentioned this to you before, everything in the world is connected one to the other. So he says, and we are connected to everything in the world. After all, everything that in the world, everything in the universe was designed, created by one artisan, Hashem Yisborach. So you would expect to see, as it were, his fingerprints running through all of it. So it says we have a connection to the inanimate, because we're made from Ophir, we're made from earth, and therefore we're connected to the earth, at least in that sense. Then helicopter landing on house. Then we have a connection to that which grows. So we eat vegetables. Some of us eat vegetables. I try and avoid them myself. As somebody said, I don't like to eat when my food eats, which is and we grow, so there's a connection there as well. Our connection to animals is far more profound. Very often people see that in animals, we can see that people really love them, and the animal really loves a dog, whatever, really, really loves its master. But the connection to other human beings, then that's the highest possible thing. And yet, in the ancient world, he writes that anybody who was foreign, who came from outside the city, and very often in the ancient world, we're talking about 3,500, 4,000 years ago, then a state was a city-state like Sparta or Athens, Corinth, these Greek places, etc. Even though they spoke the same language, were the exact same racial group and appearance, but to be an Athenian as opposed to a Spartan, that's enough to get you killed. And he said the reason is because they didn't realize that we are all connected and coming from one author. We're all the same. Nobody is truly strange, he says. And it's interesting when you go to Eretz Yisrael, then as you arrive down that big slope at Lod Airport, then there's a sign that says Zarim, which means foreigners. And he says, but nobody's really strange, and if nobody's really foreign, and if that is true in general when it comes to every human being, kal v'chomer when it comes to other Jews. He quotes the Ibn Ezra, who says the word for cruelty is achzor, and he says that means akazor. For me to be cruel towards you, I have to see you as being zor, akazor. I will see you like being foreign, being different to me. It's only if I see you as being different to me that I can treat you with cruelty. But if I see you as the same as me, then that whole thing doesn't apply. He said, how could it be, therefore, the Klal Yisrael of all is built as one family? When we go down to Mitzrayim, it says, after it talks about Esau's sons in Bereshit, then it talks about Yaakov's sons going down to Mitzrayim, Shivim Nofesh, 70 soul. Of course, it should be Shivim Nefoshes, so why it's 70 soul? Because we are one soul. We are all one family. And yet, here we are where we are, 2,000 years later, and seem to be seemingly unable to do anything about this. And I wrote a book about this 2 years ago. It came out. Its first item was last year, so it's called Building Tomorrow. And it's on the subject, so it's seen the skin of how it starts, how it spreads, and how to get rid of it for good. Now, you will have noticed that despite this wonderful book being in the bookshelves, there has been no building of the base of Mikdash since then, which is profoundly disappointing. I can only assume that not enough people have read the book. There can't be anything possibly wrong with the book. But obviously, I start off by quoting the Chofetz Chaim, and the Chofetz Chaim goes on a great length about it's all about Lashon Hora. And of course, quoting the Gemara and Silas Chinam. And as I think I may have mentioned to you before, I don't actually think the Lashon Hora, to go back to Ramat is tongue-in-cheek. This is not really tongue-in-cheek to say that. I don't think Lashon Hora is a problem at all. Quite seriously. I think it's a symptom of a problem. It's a symptom of a problem. Because when there's no Sina, then there is no Lashon Hora. You only want to speak Lashon. There's one group of people that you never speak Lashon Hora about or want to hear Lashon Hora about. That's your own children, your own family. If I come to tell you Lashon Hora about your father, there's a good chance you'll biff me on the nose, because it's your father. You feel that Shlomo Zalman was talking about before, this his karvas, this mishpacha, this am echad thing, so closely when it comes to your own family. But really, if we could feel that for everybody, yeah. There's a beautiful sefer called Shvili Pinchas, and Shvili Pinchas, I learned this is my chavrusa in England, and in this week's Sedra, not this week's Sedra, it's Pinchas. In Pinchas, he says, because we're learning ahead, so we can go through the whole thing. He brings the brisa from the Gid Alam and Alaf Amud Beis Lamdenu. Ki Ezra HaSefer Seder Es Seder Kriyas HaParshias B'Meshach Kol Shabbosos Hashana B'Kavonim Yuchedes. And of course, you split up the reading of the Sefer Torah, this whole institution of reading one parsha through the cycle of the year. You could split the parshas up differently. So when Ezra Sefer decided to split them up the way he did, the lashon he uses is the kavonim yuchedes, with unique kavana, that each sedra is miyuched to the time that it's in. And of course, you know that your bar mitzvah sedra, the major events in your life, is the interface with the sedra is also significant. But certainly for the general, back to the prat and the klal, the general and the specific. But when it comes to the general of the year, the general themes of the year, then the sedras are particularly important. He wants to say that's why Pinchas is always during 3 weeks, because Pinchas says Eliyahu Novi. Eliyahu Novi is going to come to tell us that the 3 weeks are over, and therefore it's be appropriate that, as he was given a bris shalom, he brings the Zohar, as he was given the bris shalom, he would have eternal life, in order to be able to come at the appropriate moment and say, time's up. We read about him so that at this time, to, as it were, remind Hashem, hey, remember that promise you made to Pinchas? No. How about sending him along and getting us out of this? But certainly the sedras that we're in are makusher, are attach themselves to the theme that we're in. So of course this is Sedra of Chukash. So before I suggest to you that the connection between the two, I saw this morning when I was learning with Machavrusa in Shiva. This is Ramat Salman. In his Sefer Matnas Chaim, Ramat says an extremely interesting thing. It goes through the 48 Kinyonim of Torah. This is 2 volumes, Matnas Chaim and Kinyonim, the way that the Torah is acquired. And he says the following thing. He's talking about the concept of depression. Depression is something that comes up in this week's Seder itself. It's discussed by Rashi in this week's Seder. What causes depression? So there are 2 types of depression. It's when the Jewish people are about to, Aaron's passed away, Miriam's passed away, they're about to go into to Eretz Yisrael. The quick, easy way through is through the land of Esau. Esau comes out with his army and says, if you try and come through my land, then it's going to be war. And there, Klal Yisrael is told to go around the long way. And when they do that, the pasuk says, "V'yitzer nefesh ha'am." The soul of the people is kitzer. Rashi says kitzer is like kitzer Shulchan Aruch is shrunken, shrunken, depressed. Sorry,
consolidated.
It could be consolidated as well, but in this sense, it says Rashi that whenever you find something that happens to a person, and his mind, Lashon is very interesting, his mind is not broad enough to understand what he's going through, and there's no place in his heart or her heart to accommodate the sorrow that they're feeling, that's Kitzer Nefesh. That's Kitzer Nefesh. So, there's 2 types of depression, which we've got to emphasize this very much, especially as I'm going to read what Ramatzel says, because he's only talking about one. We all know there is depression which affects people just because their brain doesn't, or the body doesn't generate enough of the happy chemical serotonin that keeps us all jolly and normal and balanced. But there's another one which is just the situation gets you down. You can't deal with you can imagine, it's obvious to imagine somebody, God forbid, loses a close relative, you lose a parent, which of course is something which every parent wants to happen. We all want, as it were, our children to be sitting Shiva for us, do we not? Not ever the other way about. So whenever you're in a situation like that's depression. So that comes up in the Seder. However, this is
sadness.
Sorry?
It's sadness. Depression is giving up hope.
No, depression is actually more than that. Again, Rashi's definition is when you just can't bear the situation, can't intellectually get your head around it, and your heart has got no place to accommodate the pain that you're going through. That's Kitzer Nefesh. Now, depression, to be clinical about it, when a person just cannot function at all. And if you ever talk to anybody who's suffered from depression, it's interesting. It's as though there's a huge weight pushing them down. When they come out of it, it's been lifted off them. This world, incidentally, is very much, it's interesting because this world pulls you down. There's good gravity. Right? This is a place, but listen to what Ratzil says about this. This is Matnas Chaim in Kinyan Ches, in this page Samach Vav. He's talking about Yesod HaAtzus, the foundation of Atzus, of depression. In a sense, very similar to what Rashi says. That really Atzus, depression, is caused by a shkofa, by your outlook, your perspective, how you see it. Lo nechlina, which is wrong. You get depressed when you don't see things right. When you're not able to deal with, just like Rashi says, you're not able to quantify, you're not able to put it all together. Why should this be happening to me? And if you think you've ever been in serious trouble yourself, or been with somebody who's been in serious trouble, as you remember I told you a few weeks ago when my late wife, Shalom, at the beginning of her diagnosis of cancer, I woke up one night for her crying her eyes out, and the question was, well, she was says, what's up? Stupid question, really. What's up, Why me? When you can't deal with what's going on in your life, that's when you get depressed. And Ramat Zion said that this comes from a hashkafa which is incorrect. Let him develop his theme. It's only a few lines. Also, he says, how to deal with, how to quantify as a midas rosh, bad midas. If you want something in life, you've got an ambition for a new car or whatever it is, or a new iPhone, and you just don't get it. Oh gosh, you get so upset. That's, of course, assuming that getting a new car and a new iPhone would be a good thing in the first place. That ain't necessarily so. Then you get depressed. So it comes out that Atzvus, depression, is a terrible avera. Now, the Manchester Rosh Hashiva, who for some reason I was in Manchester 10 days just a few days ago. Somehow I didn't get to his Keva this time, first time in my life, don't know why. But he writes about it in his Sefer. He says it's not an avera. It's not. There's no myths that don't be depressed. But he writes, quoting Rabbaran Karliner, what the Sultan can achieve through Atzvus, through depression, is much more potent than any other tool in his weaponry, in his what do you keep weapons? Armory. Thank you. Ki Atzvus bo mikoyach zeh shu chai b'li yisoidus amuna. Says Ramatas Yo, because Atzvus comes from living a life without amuna. If you realize that everything that happens to you in life, the architect of it is Hashem Yisborach. Oh, of course, nobody, unless you're a complete idiot, volunteers for pain. We daven every morning. Lo al yidei nesayin v'lo al yidei b'zayin. I don't want pain. I don't want tests. They come anyway. You shouldn't volunteer for them. But when they come along, if your perspective, if you have a Amunah in Hashem Yisborach, and the whole of Shar B'Tochen talks about this, then of course you'll say, well, okay, I don't know why I'm here, but Albina Shabbat my father has put me here. Sometimes the father, think about your own father, or think about you as a father. Sometimes you do things for your kids' benefit, which is absolutely something they would rather you didn't do, to put it mildly. They just don't get it, they just don't see it. I remember I told an example when I was a little boy. I'm an only child, and when I was 3, I think I was, or 4, I had my tonsils. I had to have my tonsils out. So my mother took me down to the hospital in Glasgow. In those days, it was a very different regime. The staff nurse, looked like a sergeant major in the American Marines. And my mother, who I was very close to, I was her only child. She took me from my mother. It was like crying. My mother was saying, I was put in this crib thing, and that was that. Next morning, the nurses stormed in, or it was her or somebody else. They were all sergeant majors, and called out my name. I was only 4, but I'd worked out that this was not the right thing to do, is to say, it's me. So I hid underneath the sheet. Wrong, because the only kid hiding is the one who's called Rubinstein, right? The rest are going, I'm not called Rubinstein, he's him. Okay, boom, she picks me up, boom, boom. Snip, snip, tonsils out, wake up from the anaesthetic shortly afterwards, and then ice cream. It was worth it for the ice cream, etc., etc. But, so I think I could get over the trauma of my mother deserting me, but suppose it wasn't tonsils, but suppose it was leukemia. A child with leukemia, the reason I choose that is because childhood leukemia is almost now, in every case, curable. So, but the child is going to be in hospital not for a night, but for an extraordinarily long time. Then it's going to take them a long time, or her a long time when they grow up, to realize that pain, the desertion of the parent who left you in the hospital, and why can't I come home? And it's painful, and they stick needles in me and all that sort of stuff. Take a long time to realize that. Sometimes Hashem puts you through stuff which is tough. If you're a miming, if you've got that relationship with Hashem, then fine. But if you don't have that relationship with Hashem, then boom, then you're going to get depressed. So the Ratzah is saying, I'll read this to you. Atzvus bo mekayach zeh. Atzvus, depression, comes from this shehu chai b'li yisoidus amuna. Imo adam hoya margish al-bari yisbarach shenimtza memahnik b'kol dover b'hoya sameach b'chelkei. If you realize that everything comes from Hashem, and you'll be masameach b'chelkei, even the bad stuff. I don't get it, but I understand it's my Father giving me this. U'margish shelo chasad lo klum, and you feel that I'm not lacking anything. Okay, I'm not rich. Okay, I'm just whatever, as an ordinary guy. You're not come to Atzvus. Again, we're not talking about Atzvus that a person is born with, which needs serious drugs perhaps for all of their life in order to be able to rebalance that missing serotonin. But what's called reactive depression, when things go through you and happen to you in your life that would pull you down, that's when we're talking about that hashkafa make all the difference. The right hashkafa.
I'm able to conceptualize this when me who went to Golis, and it's like, all right, so trying to deal with it, but when this is generation after generation,
Yeah.
so it's not you remember when you were in your mother's arms,
Right.
but we're so far removed from that.
Yeah, that's true. But hold on, I've got a solution, so don't worry. Remember, this is exciting here. I mean, the press are coming here any moment. New York Times, well, not New York Times, they'd be against it. Anyway, so according to Ramatasiah, we're talking about a lack of Amunah. Fine. So the Shili Pinchas says that the Sedras, the Sedras are chosen, or the subdivision of the Torah is there to allow the theme of the Torah to be relevant to the time of the year that it's going to be read in. Fine. Now, let me just add one little thing. The Sultan is extraordinarily sneaky. Right, so Chazal say that he's a Melech Zokin, he's an extremely wise old king, extraordinarily talented at his job, full of stratagem in order to get you into serious trouble. But of course he's a fool as well. Anyway, so basically let's see if we can, you see why I say that in just a second. Uri Ramatziel goes on here to say that Taka, with regards to the Yitzhar, sometimes to get you depressed, it gets you depressed by giving you too much, which you can't handle, and sometimes by giving you too little. Both we'll see come into what I'm trying to get to tonight. And the Sedra of Chukas. Right, so let's look at Chukas. Is there a theme of lack of Emunah in the Sedra of Chukas?
Snake.
How about hitting the rock?
What's that?
How about hitting the rock? Moshe hitting the rock. V'yidaber Hashem el Moshe lemor kachas amata v'yakal l'sa'ida ata ba'aram achicha v'debatam el and speak to the rock. And him, so that they can see it. And it will give its water. So of course, remember what we're talking about. Miriam has died. The Be'er comes in the discuss of Miriam, and Miriam has died. There's a problem in that. Just because of the death of Miriam, why should the Be'er go away? After all, every morning in the discuss of Avram Avinu, if you say Kiddush Yitzchak and Shachris as I do, there's a little you hear about sign afterwards which says, in the same way as Avram Avinu, Rabbanu Shalom, same way as Avram Avinu was willing to go against his basic nature in who's Mr. Chesed and willing to sacrifice his son and kill his son according to your command, just the same way as he went against his nature. If we've annoyed you, go against your nature. The Midas Adin should not be able to say, I'll get them. But no, leave them alone. Their father went against his nature. Well, Avram Avinu's been dead for a long time. And yet we still assume that the skus is active, is vibrant. So why did it stop there? It's a very important idea. I think as the Sephorno says, that because they did not mourn her properly. The connection to you is only active if you keep it active. But with regards to Aaron, they were wiped out emotionally by his death. But when Miriam died, it was, oh, that's a shame. Let's go on to Miriam. Therefore, you cut it off. So there's an important thought there, but just leave that aside. But the water's gone away. They've got no water. Shem says, take your stick and go and speak to the rock. And of course he doesn't do that. What are they supposed to speak? Aaron here is supposed to learn a Mishnah, Seichazol, in front of the rock. What's supposed to happen? Any ideas? When they speak, what's supposed to happen? So the water was supposed to come out. Well, yeah, sort of. In actual fact, the rock was supposed to turn into a hole in space. So that area, that surface, occupied by the rock, would be a hole in space from which water would gush. Right?
That's how it was in Torah?
Sorry?
That's how it was in Torah? By Miriam?
No, but now it's going to be. Okay, fine. So what happens is, of course, they hit the rock. The thing Hashem, it hits the matter. That's the matter that sprouted before the previous Makalakas. Kasha Tivava Yikol Moshe Aaron El Akol, but Penei Asel they all gathered in front of the rock for Yom Alahem Shimano Hamarim. Listen now, you rebellious ones. Amina Sel Hazen I said Lachem. Should I bring water from this rock? Because you remember the Litzanim turn and say, oh yeah, you used to work here. You used to be a shepherd here from your father. You know which rocks have, have the springs underneath them. This is just sleight of hand. This is just trickery. It's Chaim's not here. I'll get him to do that one for us. Anyway, should I take it from this rock? But Yarem Moshe S Yodai B'Yach as a cell, and he hits the rock on Mateo. Mine but yes, and mine Rabbi, and a lot comes of water. Blah blah blah. Hashem says to him, Aaron, Yan lo himantam me. You didn't believe me because you didn't believe in me. Also, it's terrible consequences. Fine, okay. There is an extremely interesting Saporno here. The Saporno says the attack wasn't Moshe Rabbeinu. The attack was, again, a claim that his leadership was flawed. You've taken us to places no water, very similar to the Korah argument, etc. Also, some doubts in Moshe Rabbeinu's leadership. So here's what the Saporno says. I'll read a little bit of the Saporno to you. So he says, if I can find the right place, mini nisim amasof im mekisi kodesh al achas megimel ponim. There are the miracles that we see in this forum. There are three different types of miracle. Three different types of miracle. The first of miracle is that somebody is, we just mentioned before we started this year, this terrible tragedy of this young rabbi who was swept out to sea and seems to have given up they said that the Coast Guard's given up the search for him, so therefore, terrible story. But people have been davening for ages. So, would you be surprised if tomorrow morning they found there was some boy? What do you call it here? A boy? A boy? We call it a boy. Okay. A boy out there. He swept out 2 miles, and there's a buoy bubbling up and down, and he managed to get to it, and they can find him in the morning. I wouldn't be the slightest surprised that feelings are called cholesterol. I hope it is. Look, if he's nifter, if managed to take him back, that's tragic and sad, but it could be. Sometimes you find somebody who's sick and people daven. Sorry?
That's why she can't get remarried.
Who?
His wife.
Oh, that's it. No, don't go there. I'll look at that.
I think because of the hope that he needs to be alive.
Yeah, I suppose time will be the factor. But anyway, so basically, or somebody's sick and then we all daven and the person gets better. That's Madriga number one. That's a hidden miracle. Right, you don't see it. The person just makes a recovery. Madriga number two is a miracle which is not hidden. It's open, but, says the Saporna, it's an open miracle in a way that mimics, or echoes is a better word, echoes Teva. So, for example, if you, I was telling Moshe today, I went for my interview at the final stage of becoming a citizen, an American citizen. So you've got they've got to test whether you speak English. I actually, frankly, found that quite insulting. So you got to write a sentence. I think the sentence they wanted me to write was, the American government is made up of the Senate and the House of Representatives, something like that. And I had to write it on an iPad with a rubbery pad. And you know when you go to the bank, you go to write your signature, and it looks like, a spider, a drunk spider has done a dance or something, Yeah. So she says, "Why did they give us this? Why did they give us stupid, easy? Nobody can do it. Nobody can do it." So you print it out, and I thought, okay, so I can do that. I said, this is quintessentially bad. Pardon? Okay, you're testing my English, thank you. Fine. Anyway, so then basically, then there's a bit in the test about the Constitution, the history, and the geography. This is really a question, right? See if you get this one, Americans. What's the name of the ocean on the west coast of the continental United States of America? It's impossible to fail this unless you have the IQ of a sandwich. Do you know the name? I'll give you a clue. It begins with a D. Trick. Okay, the Pacific. Okay. And then, just in case you've not been insulted enough by that, what's the name of the ocean on the eastern coast of America? So on and so forth. Okay, but one of the questions is, what are the two longest rivers in the United States of America? Mississippi. I'm glad they don't ask you to spell that. That's tricky how to spell it. Okay, and the other one, you better get this right, you're going to be thrown out then.
Missouri?
Well done. Oh, wow. Gosh, you get to stay. The rest of you guys are out of here. Anyway, okay, so fine. If you've ever studied geography, you'll know that rivers what they do is they change their course. It takes a long time, but they often change their course. And you can see the residue of the way they used to go. It's called a spur. And it looks like a horse's spur. So you'll see the river going like that. And it used to go like that, but suddenly, over centuries or whatever, it's gone that way. So there's a trench dug next to the river where it used to go. It's called a spur. Okay? But rivers do change their course, but it usually takes 100 years. So Spartan says, you can have a miracle which mimics nature. So we can all agree that in the nature of the world, rivers change their courses. Imagine instead of a miraculous well that accompanied Claudius Shaw on its journey, I want you to imagine that it was a river. I would have got them the water they needed. So wherever they went, so if they went to the east, the river would change its course and go to the east. If they went to the north, it would follow them to the north, right? Snaking its way as they snaked. But that's an obviously open miracle. Hey guys, let's go over that way. Yep, and the river follows us. But it's a miracle that mimics nature, because in nature, rivers do change their course. Yeah? It's just that they don't do it. It doesn't do it instantaneously.
Wouldn't go uphill either.
And it wouldn't go uphill, that's right. It's more about that one. Okay, I've almost seen the test. But, so that's an open miracle, but b'derech hateva. So it sounds like a contradiction, a miracle b'derech hateva, but you get the idea. But then there's a third madriga. And the third madriga is an open miracle, not the hidden miracle of the person you daven for was sick or better, but an open miracle shelo b'derech hateva, that has no parallel in the natural world at all. So if you hit a rock and water comes out of that, enough to give everybody of Claudius Shaw enough to drink, that would be the same as the river. That would be only Madriga 2. Why? Because rocks do contain water. Some rocks do contain water. Right? Ask any geologist this. You can take a rock, you can knock it in two, it's sometimes hollow inside, with water inside. It's been trapped there for thousands of years. Okay? And if you don't believe what we believe, millions of years. Of course, there's no contradiction there, but that's a different share. Okay, fine. So, that would be obviously not enough for 6 million people to have enough to drink, so that would be like the river changing shape. Fine. But for the rock to become now the area, the surface that was occupied by that rock, to become a hole in space with water coming out of that, that's a miracle shelo b'derech hateva. And for that to be opened up simply by learning a Mishnah in front of it, then of course now we're talking way, way beyond what normally happens. So why didn't Moshe do it? Hashem says to him, Moshe, as Hashem says, my most faithful servant, as he told Miriam when she spoke Lashon Hara about him, Mikol Basi, Neman, who he is the most faithful of all. Why did he do it? So remember, as the Sephora started off by saying that the fight is about Moshe Rabbeinu's leadership. And they've got no water. So Moshe Rabbeinu is told to go and do this miracle at such a high level, in which case you'll have done what they requested, or reinstate their faith and trust in you. Hini matava manoim, bon appetit, no problems. Suppose he speaks to the rock and water doesn't come out. Would that make their lack of faith in him, their doubting him, their rebellions against him, better or worse? If he fails to bring the water from the rock by speaking to the rock, the miracle on the highest madriga, if that's a failure, will that make the rebellion better or worse?
Reinforce it.
Reinforce, much, much worse. Now he knows that. He's a clever person. I know that. You know that's simple stuff. Why would you think that would happen? Shem told him to speak to the rock. Why does he do Madriga miracle number 2? Hits the rock, out comes water in such abundance to make sure that everybody's got enough water of the whole of Claudius Shaw. But that's only Madriga number 2. That's like the river changing its course. And the answer is because between Hashem telling him to do the biggest miracle, to him actually doing what he does, something happened. What happened? Why did he call them rebellious ones? What did they say? So the Litzonim, says Rashi, turned around and said, not that rock, this rock. You know what's going on. Well, Sonos is a big problem. Now, Moshe Rabbeinu calculates that if they've now done that, they're no longer worthy of the biggest miracle occurring for them. And if I do what I was told before, given the circumstances of before, which no longer apply to now, then Hashem's not going to do the biggest level of miracle for them now. And then it'll make the Machlokas much worse. So therefore I'll engineer Madriga number 2, because maybe they're on the Madriga for that to happen to them. So what did he do wrong? Well, of course, Hashem knows the future. This comes out a lot. People make the mistake of, as it were, trying to second guess Hashem. The Al Shukra Kodesh, he says you can actually, the hint is in the beginning of it. Maybe, I don't know if he spotted it. When Hashem says to him, take the matter and you've got to hit the rock. But before that, he says the following thing. Kachas amata v'hakam sa'ida. Take the stick and gather the whole of the Jewish people, you and Aaron, speak to the rock, so that they can see it in their eyes. And out will come the water. How is that possible? How do you remember the size of the camp? How big was it? 12 miles square, wasn't it? 12 miles square. I sometimes speak to big audiences, and
Like this one.
like this one. Sometimes I speak to big audiences. If you look online, you'll see when I was there a year and a bit ago in South Africa, there was about like 800 or so in the audience. And because it's a big audience and you become tiny, do you ever see people in these football stadiums, the rock bands, the famous rock bands, whatever they're called these days? They go there. Sometimes see it in the news and stuff. When you look at the computer, and you get these tiny little stick figures on the stage with the Rolling Stones, or whatever. Are they still about? Are they dead? I don't know. What's the point of going? What they've got is big screens. So sometimes I speak, and there's me, and there's 2 big screens by the side, so there's 2 other guys who are me. And the astonishing thing is that everybody always looks at him. And it's me? Because that doesn't work, because he's doing that as well. Because he's here. But everybody, what are you looking at him for? I'm here. Because you're a tiny little guy, right? So and I always think, these people go to these concerts, and these tiny little stick figures are, on this stage, and you're up in the bleachers. What's the point of going? You went there to watch him on a screen, so go home and watch it on YouTube or whatever it is that how they broadcast these things. What's the point of going there? So Moshe Rabbeinu has got to let the Jewish people see him doing the miracle. And it's a camp of 12 square miles. It's a big area. And there is 6 million Jews or more, right? By the stages in there. And they've got to see that. How's that happen? Did they set up big screens? So it's a bit like Noach in the Teva. Remember, we're talking miracle time, and therefore the normal rules of physics don't apply. So they could actually stand there and see it, a bit like in the base of Mikdash, when we all stood shoulder to shoulder, and yet somehow or other, when we had to bend down for the avoid on Yom Kippur, there was enough room, which doesn't make any logical sense whatsoever. Or they were totally shrunk. The camp, the 12 miles was, just the area of this room, so they could all see him. It's when I was the Sandik to my grandson 2 weeks ago, which is why I went to Manchester, Manchester, England. I was holding him. There's always the people who are, you can see the different personality types. There's people going like that, and then people at the Sandik different types. Okay, but if a room this size, you could see it. So they would shrink down. That's what's going to happen. The interesting thing was that Moshe Rabbeinu gets angry, as I'll say, he gets angry. And that made him slip up, not noticing that they were still shrunk in front of the rock. This is the answer. Oh, there's the flaw. There's the flaw. But here, certainly, go back to where I'm leading you to. Shirley Pinchas says, Gemara Megillah, the theme of the Seder is going to be relevant to. It's the theme of Amunah. Okay. So, here we go. For 2,000 years, we've been in terrible Golas. It's because of Sinus Chinam. and the symptom of that is lashon hara. And of course, it's like all symptoms of diseases. The symptoms get you. The cause is the disease, but the symptoms are going to actually kill you. And that's why when you're not well and you go to hospital, your temperature spiked. Then what they have to do is to get the temperature down. But then they want to get to the cause of the disease. But lashon hara is, of course, a terrible problem, which we don't seem to be able to solve. So I've got the solution. And maybe because I got the solution, it came to me before after I wrote this book. Maybe it isn't that not enough people have bought this. Maybe this. Now, I wrote about this briefly in last week's Hamadiyah. I wrote them today. Said how many letters calling for my head to be removed from my neck have there been? They haven't got back to me. If nobody's written in it, I'll be amazed. But I want you to know that, knowing that I'm probably going to be murdered from what I'm about to tell you and what we're going to reveal to the world, I knew that people were probably not going to like this, and consequently I checked it over with lots and lots of people beforehand. So just to have on record, I discussed it with the Gateshead Rov, I discussed it with two Choshev Dayanim, I discussed it with the two Rosh Yeshiva of the biggest yeshivas in Europe. That's Rabbi Avram Gurvitz of Gateshead and Rabbi Gabriel Knopfler of Manchester's big yeshiva there. Shari Torah. I discussed it with the Hasidic Rebbe I'm friendly with, Gedolim in Eretz Yisrael, and probably about 20 Rabbanim till now. Right? So it's okay. I think it's okay. So here's my big chiddush. Lashon hara has plagued us, and we've not been able to get rid of it for a long time. And remember, the theme of the Sedra connects with the year, the time of the year. So when somebody upsets you and somebody says something about you, and you know what it's like, we all know what it's like, you're upset, the desire to speak Lashon hara swells up within you like a bomb about to explode. You've got to tell somebody. And even if you've learned Shmir Lashon, or you go to a shir, or somebody in shul stands up every day and reads one from, what's that, a bit of the Tchaikovsky every day, less of the day. It just comes out. And if you live in a generation that hasn't rebuilt the base of Mikdash, you're behaving the exact same, so this is an ongoing problem. I have the solution. The next time somebody's upset and it's about to burst and you can't keep it in, go ahead. Go ahead. Tell someone. But make sure it's Hashem Yisborach. Make sure you tell Hashem. Nobody else. I know it sounds ridiculous, but think about this for a second. We mentioned before that the Sultan, Chazal say, is a Melch Zochen, but it's like a seal. He's a brilliant strategist. He knows how to trip you up. But he's a seal because he falls for his own nonsense, he falls for his own tricks. For example, you're learning a Black Gemara in Yeshiva. You're miskaven to Tosfos Kasha. You think of this Kasha, and then you look and it's like, oh, Tosfos asked my Kasha. You're bursting with excitement. You're just about to read it when suddenly you see dancing in front of your eyes a steaming cup of coffee. And you can see the little stuff coming off it. You can almost smell it. You can almost taste it. You're not saying the Mrs. for him. You're not supposed to turn around and say, ha, that's it. Forget it. It's you, Sultan. No, wait, I'm not going to have the coffee. He'll beat you. But you can say, you're quite right, and I'm going to have that cup of coffee. 20 minutes time. In 20 minutes, I'm going for the cup of coffee. And the astonishing thing is, he leaves you alone for 20 minutes. More accurate than the most expensive Swiss watch. He'll leave you alone for precisely 20 minutes, and then you might even be able to push him off for another 5 minutes. But you're going to have the cup of coffee. If your relationship with Hashem, now this only works, there's one important thing that you have to put in here. If you really have emunah, now in this book here, I point out that the Ramban says that every Baal B'tochen is a Maimon, but not every Maimon is a Baal B'tochen. There are Madrigas. You go to B'tochen Ramatasio, in my translation of Shar B'tochen, I quote Ramatasio because I brought mine out and he brought his out. I did a translation of B'tochen, he brought Shir out and something. The Ramatzio, when he quoted that, he translates betochen as certainty in Hashem. So if your emunah is such that you really have got a relationship with Hashem, that you honestly see him as Avdino Abicha Shebeshamayim, then when you tell him, the astonishing thing is, the Yetzer Hara feels I've checked the box. So he's told them. But here's the trick. This is the real point of the Chiddush. Now I've tried this out. If you really get a relationship with Hashem, if you really believe in him, then guess what? When you've told him the Lashon Hara, you no longer feel the need to tell anybody else. I've done it. I've got it off my chest. And he'd be so low. And this works. And this I've checked with Dayanim, and this I've checked with Rosh Yeshiva, etc. And lots of Rabbonim, because I wondered, are you allowed to tell Hashem Lashon Hara? Is it Lashon Hara telling Hashem?
No.
It's not called Lashon Hara telling Hashem. Lashon Hara is when I'm telling you to get to destroy somebody else. But if you're telling Hashem, you're not telling him something new, because he already knows, right? You can't be doing it for a kitruk. You can't be going to trying to get another Jew into trouble.
Yeah,
But
that's
if
right.
you are going to tell him because you are upset, and we're running out of time, but let me just read to you what, and when I was discussing Gates of Drop, he pointed this out to me. In Sefer Chovos Chaim, Lashon Hara Klal Yud, in Yud Gimel here, there's a Hagoah. He writes Hagoah. Listen to this. Here in Klal Yud, you probably remember, Chovos Chaim is talking about all the reasons when you can't speak Lashon Hara, and that is L'Te'elas. You're not telling Lashon Hara to destroy somebody. You're telling Lashon Hara for a positive purpose. You come and say to me, your daughters, somebody suggested a shidduch between your daughter or your son and somebody, and I happen to know that somebody is just a little bit schizophrenic, whatever, then as long as I'm not doing it to try and destroy the person, or I don't have a grudge against the person, that's the whole thing's about, but I'm allowed, then it's looked at Ellis, that's okay. So this is what he says in Agah. Ve'efsher, and it's possible to huadin, in kavonas al v'sipara, if in telling the story of what happened to you, right, is lahofeg es dagosa milibay, is to remove the pain and your fear and upset from your heart. So I'm not doing it to destroy you. I'm not doing it to tell on you. I'm just telling over because it's crushing me, like the Rashi said in this week, etc. If you can't bear it in your heart, because that's going to cause you to be depressed. Have a mekabel to elis alabon, but rather it's to elis. Because the Gemara says in Yuman Ein Hey Amud Aleph, Daiga believe ish is a pasuk in Mishlei in Yud Beis Kaf Hey Yisachenu la'achirim. I think the English phrases, or in America we say, in America we say, a trouble shared is a trouble halved, right?
We don't say that.
He doesn't know?
No, nobody said that.
Oh, my wife says that. She's American, so you're in deep trouble. Okay. Koi gam al ina kazeh. Then the say. So, since the Chovos Chaim applies to this as well. But you've got to be careful that you're not over any of the other protein that I've discussed in the Sif, which incidentally, if you go through the Sif, makes it almost impossible ever to do. In this wonderful Dirshu Chovos Chaim, there is modern Perushim in this, and here he quotes from Shom Zalman Auerbach. Listen to this. The Isha hamasaperes labala shehetziklo. A wife who comes to tell her husband that she's upset and distressed, somebody's upset her. Das Hagon Rav Hutner, so Rav Hutner said, and Hagon Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, Rav Shlomo Zalman says that Shemeshebudim Hamatolam Alabal Hu Largia Es Ishtoi. Part of the obligations that a husband has to discharge towards his wife is to listen to her and calm her. Midagase from her distress. But the second one, anything that's upsetting her. Your wife comes to tell you she's upset. Don't do this. La 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 la. That's kind of why you get these little things in your ear so you can stuff them in that. Do that to your wife, and it's divorce time after she's hit you about the head with the frying pan a good number of 100 times, right? This is because the person. So the Chofetz Chaim says, now we don't have time to go through this whole thing. It's going much further than longer than I wanted. But there's a whole parish here of various people who say they're worried about this, and yeah, okay, maybe. And the Chofetz Chaim only said Esher, and what if it causes somebody else to listen to her? None of the objections or none of the worries that the people have on the Chofetz Chaim's Esher apply if you're saying it's Hashem Yisborach. Again, I've got to emphasize the Yiddish word is batonin. I must emphasize, I'm not talking that you're telling Lashon Hara to get somebody in trouble. If you're telling, that's Stam Lashon Hara. But for you to go to your Rov, or to your best friend, your Chaver, and to share the pain, because it's therapeutic, and that's your reason for doing it, that's okay. Okay, if I could do that to my chavrusa, can I do it to Hashem, who's a Avinu Shemishmayim? If I, as a husband, can listen to my wife telling me she's upset and why she's upset in order to cure her pain, can't I tell Hashem Yisborach himself? But the trick is that the very exciting thing is once you do it for the right reasons, and if you really got a relationship, then of emunah of Hashem Yisborach, it takes away the need to give it to tell somebody else. So you know what? Maybe I found the solution. It's a bit like homeopathy.
I don't want to sound like that. Of course, but part of you know of telling it over is to get the reaction of the person.
Yeah.
We believe Hashem is listening, but he's not talking to us yet. He's not all there yet.
Oh, I see. That's what I'm saying. You're right. It'd have to be. But remember, so maybe the problem is obviously the problem is a certain midriga of a lack of emunah that has affected us. Okay. If you know,
He's listening.
yeah.
I have a mood that I'm not on the level that he's going to.
Yeah, he's going to speak back.
But peace would be so.
Yeah, when I was in England, my daughter was telling me about a neighbour of hers who talks to her plants. And very nice person, but she talks to her plants. She's in the garden all day. She's like, hello, hello, tulip. I said, that's perfectly okay. But if she tells you that the plants talk back, that's when you have to worry. But this is really I think this is very exciting. And I have to tell you, every Godel I've spoken to about this, they've burst out laughing. But not burst out, these burst out laughing and stuff like, yeah, with me. Yeah. So this is worth trying, okay? There are people watching here. So the people out there, and for us, try it. See if this way. I have found this to work. If you really believe in Hashem, guess what? You've got a moon in Hashem, and somebody upsets you, and you tell them not to get the other person into trouble. And incidentally, I can't resist telling one thing. I mentioned the Manchester Rosh Hashiva before. Saying, I don't know why I didn't go and dabble his kever, but certainly in his schools. I was once very angry with. Now, the Manchester Rosh Hashiva was a tzaddik god, one of the great tzaddikim of the generation. People came for brachas to him from all over the world, and people go to his gravesite Adon Yom Hazeh. So once I was very angry with him, and I decided to give him a piece of my mind. What was the story? There was a young man and a young woman who my late wife and I were very close to. We had helped them, came from zero Jewish backgrounds, and we'd helped them on their journey along the road. Not only did we help them on the journey, we made their shidduch. Not only did we make the shidduch, we made the vort. And at the vort, the young man said to me, do you teach Chassanim? I said, yes. Would you teach me? I said, of course. Of course, yes. I said, yeah. We're really getting all the way through there. I said to my wife, she teaches Kalos. And it's very good, incidentally, if the Chosn and Kala teacher are married, because then you're teaching the same mahal of the same approach. And he said, oh no, I spoke to the Manchester Rosh Hashiva, and he said my Kala should go to Mrs. Kupitz, Representative Kupitz, who's his daughter, and a family friend. And I was furious, displaying all my good midas. And I marched down to the Rosh Hashiva. And I went down the 15-minute walk from my house to the Rosh Hashiva's house, which is a place called Broom Lane in Manchester. Knocked at the door opened, and there was a young fellow about 13, 14, my grandson. I said, how can I help you? I said, I'd like to speak to the Rosh Hashiva, please. He said, what's your name? Yehuda Yainer Rubinstein. I said, just wait there. And he went into the hallway, and the Rebbe shouted, Zaidi, as a Yid, Rabbi Yehuda Yainer Rubinstein, and from inside, well, Rabbi Yehuda Yainer! And out came the Rosh Hashiva. The Rosh Hashiva was very tiny. He comes rushing into the hallway. Keep down, Rabbi Yehuda. He grabs me, he grabs my hand. Rabbi Yehuda, how are you, Rabbi Yehuda? So, it was nice to see you. Drags me into sits me down at the table like this, and how are you? How's the family? How can I help you, Rabbi Yehuda? And I went, well, Rosh Hashiva, I've come to see you because I'm very worried about my bad meters. And I told him very gently the story, wrapped in cotton wool. And I felt upset, and I feel so bad because I realised it's such bad meters. No, Rabbi Yehuda, you were quite right. I didn't know your wife taught Kaddish. If I'd known your wife taught Kaddish, but now I've given it to Reb Sukkot. I can't take her away. But don't you worry. From now on in, if I hear a cat, I'll send you. Because sometimes you're with people who bring out the very best in you. So you're really upset. You really believe in Hashem. You really see him as your father. But remember, you're going to be talking Lashon Hara about another one of his sons. So you're going to be in your best behavior. And you say it over. There's a friend of mine called Rabbi Mormon. He said, don't forget it's one of his sons. I thought it was very good. Hasofa to my Chiddush. So you won't be in a bit. You're not trying to get the person, and you're going to exaggerate. You're talking to God now. You're going to just stick in this little, just go and get, no, that's not going to work. And if you try and get him, if I come back, he's going to give, no. It's a father. It's father whom you love. Wouldn't you go and tell your dad you're upset? And the amazing thing is, try it out and tell me next week. Once you tell your father whom you really believe in and you really trust, you don't need to tell anybody else. It's a solution. Let me know next week.